To order, please.
Took it right here.
Can we dispense with previous business? Have a motion?
Make a motion, accept the minutes?
Everybody in favor?
Yep. Aye.
All right. Your first and second resolution 79 and 80 has been tabled for the 15th time by the sponsor. And now we'll go on to local law N. A local law in the County of Albany, New York, prohibiting the Albany County government from discriminating against potential employees based on their criminal arrest record or conviction.
Same. Here's the updated version for everyone who would like it. The press.
Sam, would you like to speak on that, please?
Yes, I'm happy to speak on that. So I'm happy to go over some of the changes that have been made. So the changes are they're mostly pretty minor, but so one change is in the section on the exceptions. You'll see that B through E have been deleted, and the reason for that is the first exception pretty much says that anything that's already needs to be excluded based on existing law, state or federal law, will be excluded. So I figured to make it more flexible, didn't need to have the rest of them spelled out, because that way if state law changes in the future, let's say, to change some of these exceptions, then this law would automatically change that, and this law wouldn't have to be amended to reflect those changes. So these changes won't change the law in its current state, but it'll just make it more flexible in the future if state law changes. Another change is in the previous version, the Division of Affirmative Action within the Human Resources Department was responsible for the enforcement of the law, and I just changed that just so the Human Resources Department would be responsible for enforcement. So they could enforce it in the way they see fit. They could pass along some of the duties to the Affirmative Action Division, but I think it just made more sense to have the Human Resources Department in charge of enforcement. Last major change, well, not that it's very major, is that in the old version, if there was for the appeals process, I changed it slightly. In the older version, it would go through human rights. It would go to the Human Rights Committee, an appeal, the Human Rights Commission, and now it would go to the County Legislature Grievance Committee. And the reason I changed that is after some further research on the Human Rights Commission, I realized based on how Human Rights Commissions are supposed to operate, that really wouldn't be part of their duties. That really isn't something that they should be doing. It really made a lot more sense to have the Legislative Grievance Committee hear appeals, because this is a committee that is basically, that's their purpose, is to hear appeals related to human resources issues, stuff like that. So thought it made a lot more sense to do that. And also on the appeals process, basically I made it a little bit more simple, simplified a little more, felt it would be easier for both the applicant who's maybe potentially appealing, and for the employer, the county. In the old process, basically someone would express intent to appeal, then would have to basically appeal to the Human Resources Department, and then the Human Resources Department would make a decision, and then they could appeal to the Human Rights Commission. Now, if they want to appeal, they just go straight to the Legislative Grievance Committee. I think sometimes if things are simpler, it just makes it easier for everyone, and just a much more fair, streamlined process.
So let me just, I'm sorry.
Sure.
So right now, if somebody is looking to appeal a decision with the new law, they will appeal to the Department of Human Resources, who will turn it over to the Grievance Committee?
Well, right now what they'll do is they'll basically, they'll appeal, they'll send their letter of intent or email of intent to appeal to the Human Resources Department. Then they'll have a certain amount of days, I believe it's 20, but it's spelled out in the law, to then send the Human Resources Department more information, backing up, reasons maybe that they feel that they shouldn't have, that their employment shouldn't have been turned down. Let's say, they'll argue that the crime took place a long time ago, or it was a minor crime, or they have a recommendation from someone that, some mitigating evidence. And then, so they'll send that to the Human Resources Department. The Human Resources Department will then send all that information to the Legislative Grievance Committee, who will hear the case.
Got it. Makes sense.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Did I read this correctly, that somebody could appeal by filing an email?
Yes, I wanted to make the process as simple as possible. So you could send a letter or an email, just stating your intent to appeal. I mean, there's records of emails, so I think it's a fair way to do it.
The problem, though, I would see, the letter, you can have it certified, et cetera. The problem with an email, it doesn't indicate what email address to whom, where, and I think you could find a situation where people, again, my conference actually has some other changes they wanted to discuss with you, but from a legal perspective, I just thought the email could be problematic because of the fact that, on the one hand, I agree with you. If you had a formal email, this is the email location, if it's not in that box, but somebody says, well, I sent an email, I sent it to Todd Drake, and I sent it to the chair of the committee, or I sent it to so-and-so, it
Yeah.
creates issues that may not need to be issues, so maybe it's just a point of discussion.
Well-
Maybe we can create an email address specific for this.
Yeah, I could see, I definitely wouldn't want a situation where someone sent it to the wrong email, says they express their intent to appeal formally, and then basically, we get in an argument over logistics of who the email is sent to. But I do think it's important to allow appeals through emails, because for a lot of people, that's just the easiest way to do it, and I want to encourage people to appeal if they feel they've been treated unfairly. So, yeah, maybe the solution is the Human Resources Department designating a specific clear email address to email it to, and maybe making sure that they check their spam box to make sure, just in case.
Right.
Any more questions?
As I mentioned, my conference does have some comments
Okay.
that we'd like to go through with you. Nothing, some of which you've already taken care of.
Okay,
So I sort of have to take a look at what the
I see.
comments were compared to what you were made in terms of modifications. So
okay.
Well, I thought we were looking at, you wanted to move this tonight, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did want to.
We already
move
had
this
the public
tonight, so
hearing
Are there
and-
any specific,
Yeah, they're very specific.
okay,
My recommendation, to be honest with you, would be for us to sit down and have the individuals from the conference go through it with you, because I think the changes could be viewed as substantial enough that you need to be modified. You need to come back and do it again anyway, so depending on what you agree with and don't agree with,
Do you have something? I mean, this has been out,
Yeah.
it's been out here for a while.
Yeah,
It all-
they've been working on it for a while, and then when these changes were made, basically, we were comparing the modifications, so as I said, some of them probably have fallen off the table, but in terms of, for me to sit here and say that it's not gonna modify it enough that you can just go forward with it, I can't say that, I don't know.
Yeah.
Couldn't we move it out contingent upon, no, before let me backtrack, this changes, are you saying that they're gonna be substantial enough that we're gonna need a new public hearing, or that changes that we can move this out and then do a post-public forum prior to the meeting, have it on the agenda, and once you guys work through, as long as it's okay with the author, that we pass it out at a post-public forum at the event?
yeah, I think, I would like to vote on it tonight and move it out of committee, and, and we could sit down in the future, and if some of these changes, I'm curious what they are, and if I feel that some things are worth changing, I guess could always consider sending it back to committee, but I'm confident now that I think this, updated version of this legislation is a very good piece of legislation that really deserves to be moved through and voted on, so I'd like to move it through tonight, and, can always happy to sit down with you or other members and look at, what your suggestions are, but I'd like to take action on this tonight.
This is a piece of legislation that I don't believe is going to be contentious. I think that they're trying to build consensus with some of the proposed modifications. And quite honestly, although I understand that you'd like to move forward from a practical perspective, in another month is really not going to make a difference. It would be my recommendation, again, to try to get this to the nth degree so there are no other modifications, confusion, back and forth, what version are we looking at, that kind of thing. So get it done, finalized with this,
Good. Go ahead, John.
No, Arnes, I agree with, we should develop consensus on all of our legislation, but this legislation has been out here for months, and Sam held it, Mr. Fine, I should say, we're formal here, held it for a while so that we could come up with some ideas, and, I know I talked to him about a few things early on, which he's tweaked a little bit. I know other legislators have talked to him later on, and he's at a point where, he wanted to move this thing out, and then now at the last second, we're getting more feedback. I mean, this should have been done months ago, honestly.
well, the modifications, with all due respect, this was just handed out to this committee tonight.
I know,
So-
but you had other potential changes that should have been brought here a long time
Well, no, but
ago.
we looked at the change, actually, we were working off the last thing that I did was we incorporated the modifications that you made.
Yeah.
This was handed out at I forget which committee it was.
And I can tell you, based on the changes from the last modification to this, the only difference is that rather than the Human Rights Commission hearing appeals, it's the Legislative Grievance Committee. That's the only thing, that was one very minor change I made from the last modified version to this. Besides that,
But we were incorporating the modifications from the last modification. I guess that's my point. There's been continuing modifications, which is fine. That means,
Yeah.
based upon commentary. So we have a commentary that, as I said, literally yesterday, we're working on incorporating your last set into it. And again, I understand that it's been around for months, but
But you don't even have it here tonight for us. I mean, that's what I'm just being honest. I
I don't
feel.
have it here tonight because obviously as counsel, I'm not an individual who's going to sit here and debate the merits of it. I'm just saying from a procedural perspective, I was asking for time
Yeah.
to have these individuals, these other legislators, have a conversation with Mr. Fine. That's all. And again, if it goes forward, we're still going to have the same conversation.
Yeah,
sure.
But,
Yeah.
just procedurally, I think it's clean for the public when they get a final version, that's it, as opposed to came forward, came back, came forward, came back. If that happens, I'm not saying it's going to.
I'm happy to move this forward tonight and still have that meeting. Happy to sit down with you and with legislators, discuss potential changes, and just, if I do feel that changes are warranted, then we could always send it back to committee, but I'd like to move it through tonight, and happy to have that sit down. But right now, I'm confident with the current form of the bill, and it has been out for a while, and yes, there were some more recent changes made, but really, the bulk of these changes were made, I believe, a few weeks ago, and so, I'm planning on moving it through tonight at the committee, and I'd like to continue to do that. Still happy to meet with you and other legislators in the future.
Paul,
I'll make a motion, we move it forward to the full legislature.
second on that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
It's fair enough.
Adjourn the meeting?
Second.
Aye.